The Big Red Couch, the podcast about making role-playing games. A group of GMs and players draw ideas from the mystery box and bring their game pitches to you.
Welcome, audience, to the Big Red Couch. Today, on episode 121. It's just the two of us, so I guess this is a one-to-one of some sort. I'm speaking with my fabulous co-host, Craig.
Hello.
And I'm Ben. And we're just chilling in the garden, I guess?
Oh, I see what you did there.
We're trying to elevate this rather as talking about our various shades of weather on the opposite sides of the planet. And we'll try and lift this to a more, creative realm. We are supposed to be role players, allegedly.
At least role-playing adjacent.
Role-playing adjacent, indeed. And yes, the topic for Big Red Couch 121 is... It's promotion time for the Royal Gardeners of the Emperor. Only one will advance. And it comes to us from the tireless John Rea, and was the winner of the poll, most recent. So we have got to come up with game ideas that are...
drowned out by light aircraft.
I had a roll, and it's like a fucking Death Star trench in here some days, I'd swear. Actually,
I am looking forward to news reports of somebody in your suburb, nobody really knows who, sending up barrage balloons.
With the, on the air light on them.
I mean, I remember an episode of an Australian kids' TV show involving there's somebody in a microlight, and to deal with them, they had bags of manure.
We've done that.
Helium balloons.
The Hidden Valley or Secret Valley or something.
Hidden Valley or Secret Valley, yeah.
Secret Valley, yeah. All right.
So,
and yes, it is our solemn duty to attempt to come even close to the ideas he's also suggested in response to the idea he suggested. I don't know. It's feels like we're falling behind some days.
A little bit. There was a certain amount of you sunk my battleship with one of his.
Yeah.
But yeah, that happens a bit. It's a thing.
To be honest, it was more you bombarded the docks where the battleship was being the keel was being laid down and laid waste to it before it even took to the water to some degree. But yes,
aerial assault on the docklands.
Yeah,
very topical.
In
all right.
What way? Or am I missing a bit of UK nuance?
It's pretty obscure, but there is a tube station on the Isle of Dogs called Island Gardens, which is on the edge of where the docklands were. They've now been redeveloped into alarmingly similar houses.
Right.
And in an area that got the living shit blown out of it during World War II.
That makes sense. And then was consigned to some hellish Thatcherite wasteland for the for the last 30 to 40 years.
There's some quite nice streets, but yeah.
Sorry, is it like adjacent to Shoreditch where all the hipsters hang out developing their web apps and things, or is it?
I don't know.
My
knowledge of London geography is limited to a few physical locations and how the tube stations connect. I am a terrible geographer.
Well, at least you know where the things you know are. That's the important part. If something doesn't, if you don't know of something, you don't need to know if it exists, just where it is. Let's not follow that line of thought anymore. Yeah, because my knowledge of London extends to the underground game where you chase Mr. X around the board, which I'm sure is perfectly accurate.
I mean, you've got to hope they based it on the tube map.
Yeah.
I mean, the location in question is across the river from Greenwich, so it's right by where they crashed that enormous alien ship in the second Thor movie.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. They did a wonderful job of doing that up afterwards.
Indeed. We can't be sure it was crashing. They may just be sort of like parking by touch.
just a really badly parked alien ship. Yeah, that's fair.
Explains a lot. Cool. So we've taken up John's challenge and his riposte to the challenge. So have you come up with a splendid idea before we have John skittle our paltry notions?
I went in two different directions with the idea. I tried to go with the lowest concept game I could, and ended up coming up with something that I don't actually know how to turn into a game.
Cool, I
And
did
then
that too.
Okay, and then I went in the other direction and decided to come up with, okay, what's something ludicrously high concept, and then how do I make it high concepter enough? So I had fun with that one.
Are we using the same definition of high concept? Because high concept thing in like film production is normally something you can describe in a sentence, so you can wrap up the entire idea really easily. So that's the.
I'm using it more from the thing of somebody will look at it and say that's completely ridiculous.
Oh, you mean high concept?
Yeah, high concept in there. Whoa,
Right. I just wanted to
Sorry,
make sure that we were on the same page.
Specificity is the core of good communication.
Right. So, what have you got? What would you like to roll up first? As it were?
Actually, horticultural gags should be where it's at. Damn it! Why didn't I think of this? Oh.
Oh yes. You don't look like the average fucking horticulturalist.
Oh, damn it! Okay. I wish I'd thought of those ones. Okay, fair enough. I'll go with the very simple one first, and this requires a callback or call out to a comic book from the Astronauts in Trouble series.
Okay.
Which is it's a comic about astronauts done by Larry Young. One of the graphic novels in that series, is basically a bunch of people in a bar on the moon telling stories. One of which was sparked by nothing more than the fact that the bar is called Cool Ed's. And somebody tells this story about the Imperial Gardens, that the Emperor had these gardens produced with a river in it. And at every sort of bend in the river, there would be something. Mm-hmm. And he'd sort of chuck a cup into the river, and whichever bank it washed up on, wherever it washed up, that is where the royal court would be for that day. That would be the day's entertainment and diversion.
Okay.
And yeah, the story has no relevance whatsoever to anything else that goes on in the comic. It's quite hilarious in that regard. It's just this enormous, weird, shaggy dog gag in the middle of the comic. But what it put me in mind of is, and yeah, this is the one that I don't quite know how to turn into a game. That from the setup, it's very much the only one can advance. It is promotion time for the Royal Gardeners of the Emperor. Yeah, the setup is very much this is some level of competition. It's maybe not an out-and-out conflict, but there's definitely a degree of competition implied there. What I was thinking of is, how do you do a game where that conflict is professional but not personal? So you've got a bunch of gardeners working on their bits of the garden. Only one of them can advance and become head gardener, but these are all people who are working towards the common goal of making really, really nice gardens. So they're not going to stab each other in the back over it. They're not going to sabotage each other. They don't want each other to fail.
They want to advance the cause of gardening.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, if you go with effectively cliched media version of extremely zen gardener happily pottering away, this is somebody who, even if they become head gardener, it's not actually going to affect their life in any meaningful way. They're still going to be a gardener. They're just going to have this title that they don't actually care about because they're still a gardener.
Mainly functionally, it is something that is more of a burden than anything. But they still don't want to let their personal approach and ethos down, so they have to do a good job. It's just that winning is secondary. Yeah, doing a good job and making sure that everybody else has done a good job as well. Sort of each part enhances the whole. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I have zero clue as to how to make a role-playing game out of that. There's maybe a cooperative board game in it, but I don't know how you do an RPG based on that.
Yeah, this reminds me of a conversation that I had with the people trying to buy a cooperative board game in a knickknacks and board game store, which was functionally, I think it was my first, even part-time job, in about 1995, before the Euro explosion, and trying to think back at what board games were available then that weren't totally non-compelling educational stuff, or fucking Monopoly. And they probably existed, but and the place in question had a back room with a bunch of like old role-playing games and so forth, random stuff, including like collections of like the Yamara comics from Dragon magazine, things like that.
Whoa.
Which I ended up reading quite a lot of because it was a tiny store in Newmarket, and people didn't go to Newmarket even then to buy those sorts of things. There was a lot of educational, sciencey-ish kind of thing, like Nature's Window kind of stuff, but crossed with... But they also had like Warhammer stuff. It was kind of eclectic.
It sounds it.
Yeah, and I think the manager bankrupted himself buying Magic... like opening Magic booster packs, which is a bit sad.
It was the style of the times.
It really was, And I knew when a couple of English lads came in and said, "Oh yeah, we're going to be opening a Games Workshop store," I was like, "Fuck!" Selling the.
Let me just go polish up this CV. I have a feeling I'm gonna be needing it.
Well, yeah, but yeah, that's the thing. Okay, so somebody's asking like a game where people cooperate. I was like, but it's got to be non-violent. It's like, okay. The role-playing games, yeah. Tetris. There's a battle royale Tetris game now these days on the Switch. So it's like, nope. That's the thing, and it's still not exactly. There is still like a cooperation kind of games where the Shadows of Camelot and the Battlestar Galactica kind of things where you're competing, you're competing, but you're trying to get the same thing done.
Or the Harry Potter Hogwarts battle game, which I recently played, has that, and I don't know whether it's got a traitor mechanic or not. It feels like it probably shouldn't, on the grounds that everybody's going to know who it is as soon as that character card comes up, so, yeah.
Harry, Hermione, Ron, and Nameless.
Yeah, and Draco. Right.
Rocking around with Voldemort in your party, like going,
Yes. Oh, the tight three and transfer student Thomas Riddle. Wait a minute.
Yeah, that would be a bit blatant, but yeah. So that is an interesting thing. I mean, the one game I know about making gardens and so forth. What's it called? It's like a tile placement game where you bid and select bits of your garden, and that's fiercely competitive because you're trying to collect sets and so forth and get the right stuff.
I know of Mondo, which is it's a landscape creation game, which is you're not directly competing with each other so much as you're on a timer and you're all drawing from the same pool of tiles.
Right.
But realistically, you're competing with the clock and your own ability to not fuck it up.
Yeah, similarly with this one, but yeah, you're definitely trying to, because there are different currencies, and each of the things costs a different amount. You need to draw currency so you can afford things, and then get the ones that you want. So you're. So I wish I could recall the name of that one. It's a pretty cool game. It's just, and you end up just trying to place, because the gardens come with walls and so forth. You need to lay them down in a sensible fashion. Yeah,
I mean, if I was going to do it as some sort of cooperative board game, you'd probably need to put in some kind of judging round where there were some cards set aside at the very start that affect the scoring. So you don't 100% know what the criteria you're being judged on is. But that does make it a bit of a crapshoot of a game, and does risk it turning into one of those games that, well, we could play this game, or we could just flip a coin and see who won.
Yeah. Trying to figure out what the oppositional mechanic is when you're playing a cooperative game is kind of interesting. You definitely have to have like a doom counter or some sort of mechanical thing, or a game master, shockingly. Because it's one of the fundamental things the game master does in any role-playing game is presents a challenge appropriate for the group and mediate how that arrives.
Yeah, what is the challenge? Aphids? Frost?
Well, actually, the river gives me an idea. The river's an interesting thing. The idea that there is some sort of procession, that the emperor comes down in a barge and so forth, and will stop, based on his whimsy, at a various place and will survey the lands and say, does this inspire joy or something,
So apparently the Emperor is Marie Kondo.
At the moment, pretty much. No.
Okay.
Basically, they when he steps out of the royal barge and says, Am I pleased by this? And maybe the idea is that you have resources and labourers and people, and you're doing this thing. You're working together, and there may be a secret cabal of gardeners, and they've realised that they've all got a really good job. They really love gardening, and they are bringing gardening to its highest form. However, the Emperor is a bit capricious, a little bit forward thinking, but so as the barge drifts down the river based on some sort of randomising mechanic. It basically goes through different seasonal sort of things, and the group have to try and move their resources around to make sure that whatever's coming up on the Emperor's journey is in its most pristine possible fashion. And yes.
The challenge is almost a timing challenge because you don't know exactly when he gets to that position on the dial.
Yeah,
I get it.
So that when they suddenly. Right, okay, this bit is old, he's seen it before, so we need a bit of radical landscaping to make it new and interesting. Effectively, you're trying to do the Rick and Morty VR simulation where stuff is destroyed and replaced as people move, but making a sort of this infinite, endless river world of gardens, of delightful gardens for the Emperor. And basically, so you're okay, we need to have all the labourers up this end doing all of the heavy landscaping. Okay, and then we need people to plant and make sure that, and then we're going to make sure the people go through and that it's being tended and weeded perfectly. So when it's at its peak when it arrives, mechanically that sounds kind of daunting because you could make it super it's aphids will appear in late spring, so we need to make sure that we've got all of our pollinators out of the way, and we've got the people turning up doing this. It's you can make it really complex like that, or have more narrative things come up to surprise people and come up with things like that. So, but the idea is that the fate of the gardeners is all kind of tied together, and the gardens are the sort of important thing, but they're trying to sort of keep this wacky ecosystem rolling. I guess something like the Chelsea Flower Show or the New Zealand equivalent, whose name I've forgotten, which are apparently horrifically cutthroat affairs in their own way. But yes, they have that sort of vibe that you're trying to keep this conveyor belt of scenic beauty moving.
It does mean that the head gardener, the one who will advance, is less the head gardener and is more the MVP.
Yes. And possibly, if there is some terrible disgrace on the gardening front, he will have to answer for it. Okay. And that's all very cozy and just a little bit kind of weird aristocrat.
Oh, yeah.
But, I mean, you could turn it into something like a VR simulation. This is something like, I've been reading the Quantum Thief series by someone whose name I cannot quite recall and probably fail to pronounce entirely.
Peter F. Hamilton?
No, it's
am I thinking something else?
Yeah, that's the Neutronium Alchemist and so forth. This is Quantum Thief, Fractal Prince, I think, is the third one. It is a Peter F. Hamilton-esque post-human future where there are several competing strains of human software and a few baseline people, which is quite interesting.
Rajanemi.
Yep.
Nemi.
That would be.
I see what you mean. I am very sorry to the author for what I just did to their name. Wow, I mangled that. Okay.
Yeah, and there's at least one thing where there are a quantum entanglement powered clan of people who basically descended from MMO players, and they do things, the glory of the simulation, and there's the gun club who collect every weapon in history and preserve them in these vast galleries, but also make sure that the gun club isn't about having weapons, it's about having the challenge of finding these things and recreating them, and sometimes surviving operating them. Some of them use black holes as ammunition. So yeah.
Wow.
As a series, it's one of those things where they go, here is a term, you'll figure out approximately what the term means eventually.
Oh, I do like those ones. So where you just have to do I'm just going to assume that you'll explain this at some point and move on.
Yeah. It does need The Expansion, great series, and I really enjoy the writing style. But in the idea of there's a number of people who have basically elevated themselves to semi-godhood by doing things like copying their personalities into software, running at a higher speed than their baseline, who then do the same, and then basically virtualize themselves into a network of specialized individuals in this weird hierarchy and things like that. It's like, so stuff like that. But what were they called? I've gone blank on it completely, but the MMO player descendant types get access and authority by having connections with one another, and a lot of the stuff that they do feels like, like Second Life, but they've converted some of the rings of Saturn or to act as their servers, sort of thing. So and the idea that maybe this is a glorious game of that type, rather than being a weird hierarchical thing, that they are garnering the kudos from somebody who, rather than making it a weird like social disparity thing, this is like a hardcore game. That's one way of doing it. Sorry, I wandered around brutally there. But one of the things you said kind of tied in with the idea that I came up about not stabbing people in the back.
Okay.
Because this is me, and some of the obvious things had already been moved around a bit. But the idea that Royal Gardeners is actually just a horrific euphemism for the assassins. And
so it's concentrating very heavily on the pruning aspect of the gardening skills.
Indeed,
as it were.
They're making sure that the earth is turned and the
compost is well mulched is perhaps less euphemistic than it needs to be, but...
Yeah, indeed. The fact that they're Royal Gardeners of the Emperor, which is kind of a contradiction in the prefixes there, is like, okay. The idea that the royal court, the court of the Emperor is full of intrigue and so forth, but the Emperor has this on lockdown because some of the members of the court are his gardeners. They are functionally his people and, his spies, his hitmen. And for the entire time they have been in the court, they have been doing this job. Everyone knows that there are people in here that you absolutely would not, conspire with or talk badly about the Emperor with. They just don't know who they are. However, because these people are powerful and might get their own ideas, the court is occasionally brought together, and the gardeners each receive a note saying, find one of the gardeners, kill them. If you kill somebody who is not a gardener, you're dead. The thing is, this is a double-blind assassination. This is like playing chaos at university, killing as an organised sport with fake silly weapons and that sort of thing, with people who are professionally dedicated to not being spotted and being as much like everyone else as possible.
Interesting.
So the thing is, it's like, how do you possibly make that a game? Is again, was the question that we came up with.
I have some thoughts. I'm working from the principle that all of the players are gardeners, and that possibly, that all of the players are gardeners. That's where we're coming from. So they are directly competing with each other. So it's going to be one of those games.
Yeah, well, if you can work around the idea that you are trying to screw over the other players, instead you're trying to make a story about people who are not very nice and in competition with one another, that's okay. Stop flashing back to playing Paranoia in the 90s.
I'm trying. Well, actually, to be fair, I've never played Paranoia, mostly because of the people who were desperately trying to persuade me that I really wanted to play Paranoia.
And they succeeded in persuading you that you never wanted to play Paranoia, especially with these people.
Correct.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Cool.
There was a game that former coucheteer Tonya came up with it was basically for noir-styled stories. There were a couple of play tests. It went okay because that was very much a storytelling RPG where effectively the story stick moves around, sort of locations and noirish themed things are introduced into the scenario by the players, and hopefully it comes to an end. The reason I'm thinking of that is that one of the biggest problems of having a game where you've got the players competing against each other, but the in-game fiction is that they don't know who each other are, is you either need to trust that the players aren't going to use the out-of-character knowledge of, well, I know that Dave is a gardener because that's his character.
Yeah, and to be fair, some people will balk at even trying to put that cognitive dissonance into...
What I was thinking of, if you basically do the stories in a way, and you'd obviously need to get people to sort of set up their character ahead of time or whatever, but you've effectively got people describing scenes, and it sort of moves around, you're describing a scene, maybe other people are brought into the scene, but it's done in a way so that you're never saying, I do this thing, you're describing what the people in the scene are doing.
Right.
So you're obfuscating who the player character actually is. At some point, somebody's going to take their shot, and then you find out if they guessed right.
And that does come down to a guessing game. Maybe the Questlander approach would be more fruitful. The idea that the characters are generated randomly and people take charge of them, but maybe even loosening that connection to find out, to acknowledge that these characters don't know who one another are unless they slip up. And the idea may be that if you have people casting, if you've got people like doing investigations and so forth, you naturally would be accruing some sort of level of suspicion at doing these things that someone might not normally do, or that person might not normally do in another situation. So that rather than, it's more watching these characters interact rather than owning them and having them be your avatar or your proxy in the story.
It is an interesting one, and I do like the idea.
Yeah, I'm kind of amused by the notion that the Emperor is this very, not even Machiavellian. It's like it's not manipulating people; it's manipulating the entire chessboard, so that this is like a pachinko machine or something where you funnel the or one of those psychic influence testers where you funnel the ball bearings to the top and they scatter around, but they always end up in the slots at the bottom. It's just they might take slightly different routes. It's like, so it's all set up for his safety and amusement. But yeah, the idea that is the world you're living in is like, interesting.
I mean, you maybe flip it around and go with, in the past it has been this cutthroat sniping from the shadows sort of game. This one would probably work better as a con game, that basically this time a group of gardeners have actually decided, okay, let's team up. It's a bit Hunger Games, I grant you, but it's kind of a we know if it's sort of each gardener is supposed to kill one other gardener. So you basically end up with half the number of gardeners at the end of it. Then maybe it's a case of somehow a group of approximately 50% of the gardeners have figured out who each other are and have decided, okay, teamwork.
Yeah, maybe somebody's cracked the cipher, but they feel that they've been manipulated long enough, and then they're going to change the game up and actually talk to one another. But then again, because that would make the others wildly paranoid, of course.
Well, yes. It's sort of hey, you can totally trust me because I see the dilemma here.
Yeah, that's a tricky one. But yeah, the idea that if you've got people really interested in doing scenes and picking up a character and trying it out and doing some interacting between the characters, which, and in fact, the interactions will entirely be until the point where the dagger falls, would actually be completely mundane stuff within the world, because most of the time they're not going to be going, hey, are you an assassin? Are you an assassin? It's like just be normal courtly interactions. But if you're just standing around looking for people acting like assassins and everyone else is doing the same, how do you figure out who is the assassin? Yeah, okay.
It's an interesting one.
Yes. No, maybe not a solvable problem, but...
Cool. Well, we could jump over onto John's idea.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right. So John wrote a given that this thing is his fault, suggested the game Garden Royale. The group is one of several of the various royal gardeners for the Emperor, but the position of Imperial Gardener is now up for grabs. The old one plans to retire, and only one group of gardeners can step up and take his mantle. So it's a contest between the different groups over the next year as they strive to meet the high bar the Imperial Gardener has set so that they can become the new Imperial Gardeners. This would be a dungeon world hack, adding some new character classes. And this exists on the Big Red Couch MeWe group, which we encourage you to go and join up to, despite the fact that the name basically makes me snigger. And there's suggestions such as the Master Gardener, the Assistant Gardener, the Master Handyman, the Assistant Handyman, etc. In addition to various...
Do you know who these people are he's referencing? I don't... Alan Titchmarsh and
yes.
Charlie Dimmock. I don't know who these people are.
They will be people from different gardening shows.
Right. This would be why my ignorance is vast and capacious.
Yes, I believe Alan Titchmarsh is just the gardening show gardener of the UK, from my understanding. I'm assuming that's what the other ones are.
Sure.
Indeed. So, this is a hack of Dungeon World. I'm paraphrasing here. All these suggested extra character classes are in addition to the existing Dungeon World ones, which would get some plant or garden-based moves that they can take. There's also the concept of a garden shed, which I'm guessing is kind of the home base. They get to describe the opposition. There's a season clock and a lot of game-specific moves. Plant procurement moves that will send the players to the jungles of Eta Waganda to bring back rare plants, and overall use of the garden shed to make their garden great. So it's basically a campaign with dungeon delving and fighting monsters and gardening.
Right.
Which is quite fun. Yeah, that's... Dungeon World's an interesting take on it. I quite like that.
Yeah. Okay. And yes, that would be the more campaign-style epic. The second suggestion would be a single session Royal Garden Fiasco, in which... Yes, it's a fiasco setting. 6 different character types would be interesting. It would definitely include the gardeners and their companions, the opposition, royalty, and others. There would have to be crime as well. And having already made 2 fiasco sets, he knows that there is much work in creating a playset. Locations would cover various garden locales, jungles, and the like. Needs would be an interesting set, as would items. The jeweled hoe of Athena, or the ever-plentiful bag of bone meal. But this would, of course, be more cutthroat and, yes, anarchic than the previous one. Yeah, I think watching some of the behind-the-scenes of those royal gardening shows and so forth, the national things, would probably give you some good ideas. Make it as much a reality TV meets Coen Brothers kind of vibe.
Ooh. I was thinking of DIY shows, or at least what I like to think of as the bad side of DIY shows, where it's all about getting people distracted from actually doing the work to sniping at and impeding each other.
Yes.
This is sort of impeding, but with bigger knives.
Well, yeah, the idea that people, sneak into the other pavilion to slip some Roundup into the fertilizer or something to really, really fuck with things would be pretty nasty. But yes, this would be more rather than we're on a mighty plant-based adventure, yay for us, would be more the horrible, tragic, desperate lengths people go to do something, and yeah, that sounds like fun.
It took a while to remember it, but I was reminded of a short story by Bruce Sterling, which is basically about a gardening competition.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a story called Sunken Gardens. Individuals from various factions compete in a test of terraforming skills in a crater on the Martian surface.
Huh.
It's part of his Shaper Mechanist universe, which is quite odd. Don't know why I didn't think of that before.
No, I don't recall that, but that just sounds like it sounds right up our alley.
I like both of those ideas. The sort of the dungeon worldy. We are doing a campaign to build the best garden ever. Has a lot of fun to it. Equally, so does the backstabbing garden Royale Fiasco. I'm sure at some point I would stop giggling at the jeweled hoe of Athena.
But not anytime soon.
It seems unlikely. All right, so there it was. There were the ideas that sank various battleships. Because yes, I was trying to think of something with gardening groups, and then I read John's suggestion and thought, yeah, but I'm not going to think of anything much better than that, or anywhere close to being as good as that. So let's just move on. And so I came up with something completely unplayable instead. Go me.
Nice.
Yeah, pretty happy with that. All right, should I do my more ridiculous ones then?
Absolutely.
Okay. Oh, weirdly, for the fact that I just mentioned a story about terraforming, the what is a ridiculous approach to this one actually involves terraforming.
Fair enough. Yep.
And in this case, it's a space-going empire. I keep thinking of it kind of in the bits of the implied setting from the Black Book Traveller game, where you did have sort of sector nobility, and I'm not sure if there was an actual emperor or not, but...
One of your stats was your social status in Traveller, so that was a very, very implicit... No, an explicit statement that, social class was hugely important.
Indeed. And so in this case, it's the Royal Gardeners aren't building pretty gardens, they're terraforming worlds. And the promotion time effectively is teams of Royal Gardeners are sent out to terraform worlds. Because we don't actually want to spend a few billion years building up the oxygen cycle, let's assume that you can kickstart this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Promotion time, effectively, the Emperor and presumably his court are doing a tour of these worlds. One of them is going to be the new capital.
Yeah.
So that one, I couldn't decide whether it's the sort of game where people are going to be trying to actively sabotage other gardening teams.
Pretty difficult to sabotage a planet.
Not without genocide, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm figuring that this is a game that probably, it's definitely going to be a short-lived thing. Sort of a short-run campaign. But I think it is a game that is less about the destination than about getting to there. It's the game of terraforming, of dealing with whatever weird-ass planet you've been assigned and trying to make a place out of it, and dealing with the challenges it throws at you. Does it have ice weasels? Are there indigenous inhabitants that you didn't know about? This kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd want to play like a 2-year-long campaign of that. Certainly wouldn't want to run a 2-year-long campaign of that. But something in the shorter term. Okay, and this session's challenge is going to be this: space pirates. Kind of once it becomes the Imperial homeworld, space pirates aren't going to be an issue. But until it is, they're more of a problem.
Maybe there's a chance to flip it around here. Maybe the party in this circumstance is not the Emperor, but maybe the Emperor's inner circle, or the people, the advisors and people protecting the Emperor. And it has been decreed that, the Empire has to have a new home planet and move around in this odd way. So they are judging and weighing up these planets as they're presented, and conceivably, one is going to be better than the other, and it's going to affect the shape of the empire for possibly millennia to come. So they're trying to balance their own interests with the ongoing interests of the emperor and the empire going forward. So maybe that's the challenge there, and they're trying to. Because there's some sort of bizarre arbitrary rules. They have to balance out the vicissitudes of having a worlds mayhap be hastily terraformed and, maybe slightly volcanic. Maybe this is kind of a not the most advanced space civilization. Possibly they're moving because the previous Imperial homeworld is slightly geologically unstable, but they're trying to make the best of the next move and guide the Emperor to somewhere safe, but also has the sky, which is the right shade of pink that he likes.
So in this case, the players are this...
They're the judges, the selecting body who get to... And at this point, you could effectively make the worlds random to a degree. They've all got good sides and bad sides, and maybe there are outcomes based on the various attributes that mean that. So the Minister of War wants the planet to be have lots of wild animals and lots of places to hunt and have like fierce inspirational terrain. Or the Minister for Culture wants the place to be relatively calm and central and have lots of opportunities for trade and culture to come to and fro. And so they've got their own things, but nobody wants to live on the world which is entirely made of volcanoes.
Yes, even the Minister for Mining wasn't particularly keen on that one.
So yeah, it's trying to take the opposite angle and make sure that the Emperor is a somewhat innocent party in this. They have to go somewhere, but their choices must be informed by people who make good choices.
A wise Emperor listens to his advisors.
Indeed.
The temptation to go a little bit Warhammer 40k Imperium of Man on it, and have it that, yes, there are all these places being terraformed, but there's always something rotten under the surface. And part of the job of these, they're going around, they're judging it, they're finding the right place. They're also trying to find out, okay, what's wrong here? Have we got a fermenting rebellion, sentient plants? What is it? What's going to fuck with us on this one?
Yes.
And how do we get rid of it?
Yeah, the Philip Mann Master of Paxwax stories are very similar sort of thing. They have a Empire of Man kind of thing, and a fermenting alien rebellion. But the aliens are it's much less edgelordy, and the aliens are much in their own ways. They're very alien, but they're not just designed to be bastards. But the idea that the human society is basically made of great houses that have become very genetically distinct over time, have committed vast cruelties amongst the stars, and this is all kind of coming back to haunt them is definitely a thing. So yeah, that's that could be quite I definitely like the idea. The theme is that yes, we must spread the Emperor's glory among the stars, but not fall into some sort of trap or calamity of our own making.
Yeah, I mean, sample dialogue of, what do you mean you covered up the impending supernova? What is wrong with you?
There's nothing wrong with the planet per se. It's fine.
Yeah, look, there is only a 5% chance that the supernova will occur during the time that the Emperor is likely to be here. Of course, if it does, the gamma rays will evaporate everything on one side of the planet.
Yeah. The idea is it's a bit of a shit space empire in the same way that that Warhammer 40k can make murder guys and guns and so forth, but and orthodoxy, but practically nothing else.
Yeah.
But yes, there's this great galactic spanning thing, but it's just a bit shit. It's kind of appealing.
Yeah.
Like any empire, it's kind of it's overextended and rotten at the core. And while there is the biggest existential threat is itself, its own top heaviness and unwieldiness, and the idea that okay, here's the solution. We're going to move to another planet. Pick a good one.
Yeah, we've turned this last one into a shithole. Let's not do that this time. We're already doing that. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, that
theme
happened about
for a game.
3 minutes. Yeah, that happened turning it into a shithole started happening about 3 minutes after the first probe arrived. Seriously. Yeah. And my even more ridiculous idea, which is very much the whole sort of steering the fate of the Empire. But in this case, I'm sort of fixating on the Royal Gardeners of the Emperor, because you pointed this out as well, that sort of Royal and Empire, okay, but also it's not the Royal Gardeners of the Empire, it's of the Emperor. My thinking is that this is, again, your empire. It doesn't have to be a space empire, but it's going to be a bit of a weird one. It's the Royal Gardeners aren't gardening planets or plants or anything. They're gardening the future of the Emperor, and by extension, the Empire. They're the ones in charge of attempting to prune the timeline for the benefit of the Emperor, to look ahead, to see the trouble brewing, to see the threats that might be affecting the Empire in the future, and make them not happen. And this promotion time is basically, they've got their plans in place, they know what they're doing, but at some point the Emperor actually has to pick, okay, which timeline are we going down? Like I said, it's a bit sort of whoa concept, but
Right.
I'm not sure how well that comes across on the audio, to be honest.
Yeah. No, it
Yeah.
works. So yes, it's sort of a big psychohistory kind of.
Psychohistory, but instead of being a fully automated luxury gay space communist utopia. I think that was the phrase.
Yes, yes.
Instead of that, it's all about the emperor, or possibly, depending on how you wanted to do it,
Oh,
and if you wanted
sorry.
to make it.
Sorry, I just came up with a terrible pun. So basically, it's the Emperor's New Grove.
Nice. Like it. Like it. Terrible, but I like it.
Oh, why do I do this?
Why are you like this?
Yeah, I don't know. Right, sorry, where were we? Back to just madness.
We were making terrible puns, apparently. That's what we do now. So, yeah, you've either got the... I haven't really decided whether this is I suspect it's probably a team of people who are a royal gardening team, if only because I really do not want to try to run a game where you've got multiple players careening through time trying to interfere with each other's plans. That feels like madness and ooze, though possibly Taz's system with the cards might rewind,
Yes.
might cope with it. So it's probably easier if everybody is on the one team. They are attempting to make their version of the Empire's future as glorious and wonderful as possible, and having to deal with those dickheads from Team B.
Yeah. Or maybe if someone has the energy looking at Luke Crane's Burning Empires, that might be kind of thing that I've heard bits and pieces of discussed, never read the actual weighty tomes themselves, but yeah, they sound like that where they sort of aim at that sort of thing as well. Though it's based on, because it's a burning wheel kind of thing, it's based on the beliefs of the characters and the like.
Interesting. Yeah, I haven't read it either. I did try listening to or watching back in the day when the podcast was still a thing.
Mm-hmm.
They did a few videos on this is how Burning Wheel works. The trouble is they, at least from my point of view, started assuming a level of comprehension of Burning Wheel that I did not possess.
Yeah, that's been my experience with Burning Wheel. It seems to be there is, looking at it from the outside, that people think this is really cool. All you've got to understand are all of these words from, like, Babylonian and so forth that mean these complex ideas. It's like, okay, that's a good start.
That's a complicating factor.
I've been helping people understand ability checks and skill checks and how to read a character sheet lately. And it's like, I've been realizing it's like there is a level of structuring conversations about game systems that I have not had to parse for a very long time. So when I say, oh, just do this, I am actually saying, here's a huge bundle of concepts that you might not be familiar with.
That will have to be unpacked. Yeah.
Yeah. So once people get it, they get it. It's not that hard. It's just that until they're there, it's like you might be talking gibberish, as far as they know.
Yeah, it's quite a big first step. Yeah, I mean the flip version of this, as it were, if you went with, in my mind, it matches up solidly with some of the Lois Bujold Vorkosigan stuff, though it doesn't. I can't really justify that. But there was one of the space empires out there was in those stories. The Setagandans were very big into their genetic manipulation, hugely into their genetic manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm kind of thinking that if again you have this Royal Gardeners, you have this time stream thing, rather than having your sort of immortal emperor cascading through time with his empire of sort of people with the lives of ants around them, what if you instead have the thing of, only one will advance. You've got a bunch of teams of Royal Gardeners, each of them have their candidate. Only one of those candidates is going to be the emperor. Their job is creating the time stream where that happens. And this is kind of how the empire progresses, that the one who becomes the emperor is effectively the one who has manipulated the future, the past is set, he's manipulated the future enough that they are the emperor for their lifespan, their natural lifespan, hopefully, to carry the empire forward in this unbroken and glorious tradition with blackjack and hookers.
The qualification for being the emperor is being hooked up enough to be the emperor? That sounds like
blatant nepotism.
Well, current political system, to be sure, to be fair. I mean, yeah. So that's also the impressive thing is that the since you said it's for their lifetime, you implied that they've managed to organise this like prior to being conceived or something, or at very least, in the womb. So they are quite well qualified as candidates go.
I'm assuming, yeah, it would be a bit of a contrived thing, but you sort of got your realistically, you've probably got an imperial family. That's how these things usually break down. But it's basically which of the imperial heirs is going to be the new emperor. The one whose team has crafted the best empire for them to be the emperor in.
Given that best in this circumstance is definitely comparative, does that include ruining other people's timelines just so they get disqualified?
I would assume so, yes. For this one, I would probably want to use something like Timewatch, because it's got a lot of the paradoxy stuff and the sort of timeline interaction stuff. And this also feels like the sort of circumstance where if you find that you find a member of your team lying face down in an alleyway 50 years in the future with 7 knives stuck in their backs, one of the first things you remember not to do is not check their pulse. Because once you check their pulse and know they're dead, you know that's an event that's going to happen. If you don't 100% know they're dead, you can maybe do something about it before it happens.
They might just be sleeping comfortably with a very fashionable knife jacket.
Indeed. It could be a mannequin that you've set you've set up ahead of time with a ha-ha fooled you note.
Right.
If you can get to them before the stabbing occurs. And then also, presumably, you maybe get to spot whoever if you manage to pull this off, you get to figure out whoever did it if you're watching, and then somebody suddenly has that weird look of simultaneously knowing that they did and didn't stick 7 knives into some guy in an alleyway. Anyway.
Yeah. I like the idea. I'm not sure about the
execution.
The approach just sounds playing out something like the Foundation series or something like that. That sounds like a very special sort of person who wants to do that. I don't want to yuck anyone's yum, but
making it fun would be tricky. Yeah. You would possibly want to focus it in on, okay, here is the couple of pivotal events in this person's empire. Or if you're going back to the continuation of the emperor of the empire itself rather than the specific candidate, then it's here are the pivotal moments in the empire's future. How do we deal with those? How do the other people want us to deal with those? And how do we stop them from wanting that? This kind of thing.
Yes, interesting. That's really kind of puzzling because, if you have carefully manipulated the timeline so that your emperor is definitely the best emperor, and it can be... Who do you prove that to, though? That's the interesting thing, because that's the thing, is the emperor is presumably unborn, the rest of the family may have their own ideas. It's like, or you're just doing this in the shadows, going like, boom, ha-ha, you fools, this has all been planned out in advance.
That's an interestingly creepy idea.
It's a really Bene Gesserit kind of manipulation of lineages and so forth. Yeah,
you take away the different teams for their different teams competing, and it's more the Royal Gardeners of the Empire. Maybe they're this sort of, they're not quite black budget, but it's kind of they are this group. They have been around forever. They steer the empire. They steer the emperor. It's like gardeners of the emperor. They garden the emperor. That's the thing. It's
like, okay, yeah. That's...
So because then that also gets it away from the sort of either the player versus player or player versus enormous number of NPCs aspect, and it's more the people operating effectively in the future of the newly born heir to the empire, crafting their future. How creepy is that?
That is kind of weird. I guess that would be a situation where if you had a really specific space fantasy kind of thing, and you wanted to really, and you had this yen to create a really complex kind of society, and you'd actually mapped out to a degree how it was going to go forward, and the players would be going, you effectively be giving, some games, if they had a musical analogy, you would be giving you give the players a big bass drum and a stick to hit it with, and they go boom, 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 and they have a great time. Sometimes it's like a full drum set. It's very complicated. You've got to get everything done the right way. This would be like giving them a full church organ kind of setting thing, where you could have all these different things to play with, and the idea would be having them to really immerse themselves in the setting and going, okay, we want this to happen over here and this to happen over here, and then we do this, and it all flows in a particular way, and then we deal with things as they come up. So that would be one approach, a really setting dense kind of thing where people get to really roll around in the lore and do the things that they're excited about in that world.
Yeah, you would need a lot of campaign management to make that happen. It could be fun, it could be hideous.
Since you're effectively building the future and controlling it to a degree, it would be a kind of thing that you'd want to be deeply invested in, but you might not need a GM so much. You might literally just be collaborating to make, okay, so what could go wrong? What's the chance of it going wrong? Okay. Oh, okay, what do we do about that? It's like, so it's a lesser traditional game and sort of this more alternate history kind of...
It's almost like a weird version of Microscope.
Yeah, it's like a telescope? No.
Futurescope.
Endoscope? No.
Excuse me.
I've just made everything bad again, haven't I?
It could be worse. I could have mentioned the book Up the Elementary Canal with Canon Camera.
Yes, you did.
Oops.
Not for the first time either. Right.
It's a hilarious book. Also, it had illustrations.
That's not good information. Cool. But yeah, no, that would be an interesting... What you are effectively playing is Imperial Shadowrun heist planning, the never actually having to roll dice bit.
Oh, God.
Which could appeal to folks. The idea is that, you plan out this elaborate raid on history, and these are the things you're going to do, and these are how you're going to react if the things happen. It would possibly, as a huge convoluted setting kind of thing, might work better as like a forum game or something, a play-by-post kind of thing where people go, okay, what are we going to do about this? Oh no, there's a rebellion projected to happen in like 30 years. How are we going to get ready for that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's for a very, very specific kind of monkey, but I'm sure they exist.
Yeah, I mean, if I was going to do the somewhat more hands-on, okay, let's just go in there and kick the shit out of this rebellion before it ever starts, kind of thing, I'd probably do a mix of Timewatch and maybe nick some of the societal stuff from the game Reign.
Yeah, I'm not even convinced that you should be going and stopping stuff. The idea is that maybe even is like, oh, there's a rebellion, but this is how we will set the Emperor up to deal with this, and then come out looking like the hero of the people. Not, it never happened, but we are ready for these things, which is why he is the best and most appropriate Emperor.
I will admit I am thinking of it a little bit more in the sort of the Bond behind the scenes approach.
Get in the middle. Yeah.
Yeah, get in and get your hands dirty approach. But yeah, it's very much sort of the winning move is the one you never have to make kind of approach. Yeah. Okay, you turned that into a way better idea than I had. So nice.
It does really feel like the intellect's vaster and cooler than our own kind of approach to playing a game.
Nice.
But yeah, the idea,
like it.
The idea that this is all mapped out, and you're just like you're choosing the points where things, and catastrophe, and possibly actually having to deal with that. But maybe if it is all projected, and you're working only with things that you have at the time, it's like maybe you do say, okay, there's this revolutionary leader who's going to rise, and we know from the patterns of history that this is going to happen. Maybe in extremity, you go out and you bomb a hospital or something to remove the possibility of this one individual, but then you have just scattered that projection into complete chaos. So you only ever do that if it's like if all of the outcomes are just completely unthinkable. So yeah,
yeah, I mean, the more subtle approach would be, okay, so we've got this leader who rose from poverty to bring forth a revolution. Let's just remove that poverty aspect of it, shall we?
Or you have the emperor give largesse to the community they're in, and so forth, and make that mean that they're brought up with greatly respect to the emperor, even if they are a bit of an agitator. They have this inbuilt kind of consideration. The emperor's actually trying to do the good thing. So yeah, it comes out and appropriately end. So much more subtle kind of widgeting with history. So
there's an idea that's sort of come up while we've been chatting. I keep throwing these things out there, so I do apologise, audience, for dragging this on. One of the Doctor Who Christmas specials is a pretty solid riff on the Dickens A Christmas Carol.
Shockingly enough,
yeah. And it basically has it has the Doctor visiting somebody repeatedly throughout their own past to try to make them a better person, effectively. Usually, I think, always on Christmas Eve.
That was the Great Intellect one with Richard E. Grant in it?
I'm thinking the one with Michael Gambon and the Flying Shark.
Carry on.
Okay. You've not seen that one yet? I mean...
I think I have, and I think I tried to successfully up until the last moment to forget there was one with Michael Gambon and the Flying Shark in it.
Just to be clear, Michael Gambon was not at any point riding or playing the Flying Shark. Just wanted to make that one clear.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, right. Just throwing that one out there. I just kind of had this idea, and there's just this weird image of the sort of the young emperor being set up to rule, or possibly being decanted from the storage tanks upon the death of the old one, when the hazy on the doesn't really matter. Basically being visited once a year, or depending on the timeline, maybe once a decade, in the dead of night by this team of royal gardeners with their advice for the next decade. Comes across as a bit creepy, but
Yes, it does. And again, if it's how do you play that out, kind of is the question.
Indeed, yeah. I think in that case, you make sure that you possibly flip the script on it at that point, and you go with, you've got this system. Perhaps there is the tradition that once every year or every decade, everyone is cleared out of the palace, and the emperor spends the night alone in the palace. All the lights are out. That is the night when the Imperial Gardeners arrive to give their advice, and the players are in some way caught up in this.
Okay. Yeah, I gave the
possibly on the grounds that it turns out the Royal Gardeners maybe are just a pack of dicks and kind of need to be stopped.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like a Doctor Who scenario. Well done. So the idea that the players appear in this really unusual situation just as the doors close, and like this 12-year-old emperor is going, "Oh wow, this is really terrifying. Are you the gardeners?" Gardeners? Yeah. No, we can do some digging if you want. I mean, you're the emperor. We don't have anything better to do. Oh, those things, those giants in the robes, the gardeners. Oh, shit.
Yeah. Oh, balls. Yeah, it's like, no, we'd broken in. Yeah, we figured we'd take advantage of this power cut to break in and nick some shit. Kind of regretting it now, to be honest, Your Majesty.
the trans-temporal do-gooder angle, I think, works very well for that. And in fact, I think that's a very workable
Okay.
Doctor Who. And I don't think we've actually done something I think, yeah, that's a Doctor Who episode, but that sounds like a Doctor Who episode.
It kind of does, yeah. You get dropped into this completely shielded against everything, including the sonic screwdriver, because why not?
Standard, yeah.
Yeah.
Sealed inside, this with one terrified 10-year-old emperor going, okay, I'm about to get all this information I'm going to need for the next decade. Who are you guys? It's like, and if you want to dig on the timey-wimey thing, it's like, okay, all right, set the dial, we come back in 10 years and see how he's doing, and maybe we get a better idea of how to deal with these terrifying ancestor spirits that are telling him what to do because they know something about the future that isn't entirely clear. Yeah, that sounds fucking
nice.
Actually, apex Doctor Who kind of shit. Especially if you skip forward and you have the 20-year-old, the 20-year-old, 30-year-old. Maybe, yeah, you can make it into a pretty compelling tale. Huh? Yeah,
that's way better than anything else I came up with.
Yeah, no, I like it.
Cool. Yeah. I hadn't thought of the specifically making it a Doctor Who episode angle, but yeah, that, as you say, that is totally a Doctor Who episode.
Nice.
Yeah.
Coolio. So,
if we have completely exhausted all of the entertainment possibilities,
oh yeah,
and I believe we have for the Royal Gardeners of the Emperor,
no one will ever be entertained by this idea again. We have made sure.
Indeed. Oh yeah. This is posted on the Fear the Boot forum from Taz and reads. Yeah, there was references to a game called Ryutama.
Ryutama, yeah.
Ryutama
means dragon egg, but it's amazing. Okay. It's Miyazaki meets Final Fantasy meets You Should Go for a Walk. It's nice. Okay. I have a copy, and it is a very chill, low stress kind of thing, and down to the point that you might the items that you might acquire for your journey are cute boots that have the aspect cute, and that's the kind of thing that you would make sure that you note down your character sheet
because your boots are cute, and that information could save your life one day.
Indeed.
Okay. Well, Taz writes, just to riff on Ryutama, since the GM PC is an elusive dragon, it would be so easy to hack that. Imagine a modern-day version of Ryutama, but the creature that is snooping on the PCs is a levitating blue whale. After all, nobody believes in dragons anymore. Of course, your whale is a master of disguise, and/or has powers like chameleon skin. Perhaps only the PCs can catch the occasional glimpse or hear whale song from time to time. As they begin to doubt their sanity, things become far from normal and they realize that they're faced to be heroes, with a capital H, whether they want to be or not. John followed that up with, so he's whale-sized, right? So he can disguise himself as a waiter, but he's still whale-sized, right? Aside from the silliness, he can disguise himself perfectly as whale-sized objects. Clouds, hills, trees, etc.
And Todd followed up with, it would be funny if the non-player characters could not see the whale at all. And yes, they're just being followed around by this gargantuan floating, well-meaning, but slightly awkward whale who is encouraging them to be bold and noble heroes.
And I quite like the idea, it was something that occurred to me with the whole thing of, he's whale-sized but can disguise. I quite like the idea if you could do it, and you'd need to have a long enough running game that you could pull this off. So it's sort of one of these ideas that is great in my mind, but would probably never actually work, of having the players eventually figure out, oh, okay, there's actually a whale. Wait a minute. How did you disguise yourself to fit into a restaurant, and sort of think back and realize, actually, we've never run into this guy anywhere where a whale couldn't be. So if he's a waiter at the restaurant, he's always in the patio section.
Yeah. I did have a couple of characters in a Dragon Quest game who were sort of nebulous, kind of helpful people who had these plans. The PCs suspected them greatly, but they were functionally refugee biological equivalents of culture ships that had fled the Calamar, which is the version, the Ithalid that we had, Empire. So they were sentient void ships projecting
Oh, wow.
like human forms, but there were little things that the players didn't get to the bottom of because they never got far enough. That if they tried to like detect their aura or get some sort of remote magic information, despite them being out in the same room, they were out of range.
Ah, that's quite cool.
Yeah, it never played out. Then the main one they ran to was Mr. Savage. His name was actually like Savage Joy at the overthrown the toppled dictator or something like that.
So, Mr. Savage. Yep.
Mr. Savage. And yeah, so and presumably he was floating around in like near astral orbit or something with his little avatar wandering around in the world. And they was like having a conversation in his drawing room and going, why can't we snoop this guy? But yeah, the idea that the running gag is that this helpful person keeps turning up incongruously large distances apart, but only in a place, never indoors. It's like, yeah, here we go. Cool. No, I like that. And Ryotama looks like a good time.
I would like to. I shall have to track down a copy of Ryotama because it does sound interesting and it's come up a few times. Taz also mentioned a new idea, maybe something like Everyone is John, but instead of voices inside your head, the players are spirit animals that only appear and are optionally tangible to their host. So your typical levitating blue whale may only be a foot long, but likes to casually swim around their charger's head. I'm also reminded of the therapy scene from Penny for Your Thoughts and the game Monsters and Other Childish Things.
Yeah, Tiny Levitating Whale is also the mascot for Steven Universe's mother's Rose's room, which is basically the a holographic projection area inside the temple, which they haven't brought up since like halfway through the series. But yes, the tiny floating whale is it turned up briefly in that. So yeah, same sort of thing.
Okay. I enjoyed what Steven Universe I saw.
That has actually closed out the main arc of the story.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's it. That all kind of quite spectacularly came to a close with some kaiju-esque action at the end there, and tearful reunions. So yeah, it's a good time. There's some small problems about galactic war crimes that kind of need to be ironed out, but yeah, the bulk of the story has kind of been resolved. There may be spin-offs beyond that, but
cool.
Alrighty. Alright, so thank you for all the contributions, and the last thing that remains in our episode is to lay out the options for the poll for next time. We've got one new addition, which is Which Planet Soccer, which as in the W-I-T-C-H, and that is from Craig. Apparently you've been reading questionable content, rather than just
I'm not on trial here.
Alright, so that's Craig's suggestion randomly pulled out of the hat for voting upon by our listeners. And we haven't dead pulled anything yet, so the other three are still there, which include It's All Downhill From Here from Anonymous Source, I Will Be a Witty Man with My Dangerous Bottle from Will Meyer, and Song of the Old Gods, the Colour Out of Space album. And that joined by Which Planet Soccer, and we'll have popped the polls up in time for people to vote and come up with loopy ideas for those.
Excellent.
Cool.
All right. Well, thank you very much for listening, everybody.
Indeed.
If you come up with something better, in so many places and times. Places and times.
Indeed. Mm-hmm.
If anything we said sparked a clever idea, please let us know what it was. We are desperate for content.
Well, we're desperate for meaningful content, let's be fair.
That is true, yes. Qualifier, yeah. I mean, let's face it, drivel we've got down pat.
Nice.
All right.
Alrighty. Having established our brand, we will sign off, and we will see everyone next time in episode 122, To Be Decided. Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Want to hear more of our shenanigans? Then go to hoarde.net and click on the button that looks like a couch. The Big Red Couch is released under Attribution, Non-Commercial, Share-alike 3.0 Unported from creativecommons.org. All music on the show comes from the album Universal Fluff Theory by Krakatoa. Visit them at krakatoa.com or follow the link from our page. See you next time!